At 9:09, time to jump into our radio roundup segment on KSVC. Duke Dance, Dan Jessup in the studios. And joining us live this morning is Paiute County Commissioner Darin Bushman. Good morning, Darin.
Good morning. Nothing like following sports and football with politics.
Yeah, that's the best,
but I'll tell you.
Yeah, I'm sure that I'm going to live up to the last segment. Thanks a lot, Duke.
Well, you can't talk enough about federal ownership of lands. How much, like 90% of Paiute County is federally controlled?
We're actually 72%. The state has the rest of it.
Oh, my goodness. So
yeah.
So the feds and the state, okay, great.
Pretty much. But we'd rather have the state have it for sure. Versus where we're at today.
Well, I know you work really closely with Kevin Ivory, who has really spearheaded this initiative, and you spent some time with him and some other lawmakers, not just from Utah, but from across the country, really a lot of lawmakers coming in from other states at the American Lands Council meeting just a couple weeks ago. And that was a big initiative to be able to talk with some of the other lawmakers from different states.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been involved with this movement kind of from the beginning. I first met Ken Ivory at a UTV Jamboree in Marysville. He came down and he proposed this idea back in the days of the Take Back Utah movement that was going on. And I thought, boy, what a novel idea. It was pretty interesting. And then been involved with it ever since I became a commissioner. And it's really, really exciting to see the growth. It's called a multi-state workshop that they had in Salt Lake. We had 14 states represented. Lieutenant Governor Meade Treadwell, of course, our Lieutenant Governor Cox, Speaker of the House Becky Lockhart, senators and state legislators from all over the country there, as far east as South Carolina, representative from South Carolina. And it's interesting, the East is starting to figure out that they're the ones that are footing the bill for the West not utilizing their land, and that they're actually paying the Western welfare, as so many like to call it. And so the East is starting to wake up to this problem and realize that they need to get on board as well. So it's really exciting. The stories are all the same, Duke. It doesn't matter what state you're at or where you're at. When you listen to the issues that are going on, every state has the same types of issues, and the inability to utilize the land and the condition of the land, and the fact that the non-governmental organizations, the NGOs, are really tying the hands of the federal agencies and the people that are on the ground. And I've said this before, we've got great people on the ground, but they have a real hard time getting their jobs done just because of where we're at.
There was that hearing the other day, legislative committee, talking about the fact that people who live on federal land or near federal land, their houses are in danger because they cannot take any action to protect them from wildfires under so many of the government regulations. I don't know how much of an issue that is in Paiute County, but statewide it's a big deal.
It's an issue nationwide. Every place you go, catastrophic wildfire, we're burning up 7 million acres a year in catastrophic wildfire. We have 190 million acres of forest. So how long have we been doing this, and how much longer can we do it? Pretty soon the wildfires will stop. The reality of it is that, my 10-year-old, he says, "So, Dad, are there going to be any forests left when I'm an adult?"
Yeah.
And it's a really valid question. He's very concerned about that, and I think we should be too. I think we need to wake up to this and realize that we're on a trajectory right now that our kids and our kids' kids are not going to see what we grew up with as far as forests and the mountain and the landscapes. And, the real problem with it is when this happens, it destroys watersheds, it destroys,
wildlife habitat.
Wildlife habitat for generations. This is no small issue. We had a meeting last night, and our sheriff made a really good point. We're worried about cows causing erosion in riparian areas, and he goes, let's talk about erosion. Let's talk about 560,000 acre wildfires. They're not even in the same ballpark.
Even in the mountains above Farmington, they had wildfires, and that caused flooding of a lot of those homes because the foliage was no longer there. And so they had those huge areas where the water just poured through, and that's a big issue as well. But a lot of the decisions concerning federal lands are made by people who live in cities. That's where most of our legislators, national, and even many of our Utah state legislators, they don't really understand, all of this, all of it you're talking about.
It is interesting. We do have a pretty good contingent of folks from the city that are driving this effort, but we also have another, contingent that just thinks it's a bunch of whining going on, So I can't say enough about some of our leadership, though. You get Representative Kevin Stratton, who's helping drive this effort, Mike Noel, Ken Ivory, Becky Lockhart. We've got some great
They're
leadership.
on board, yeah.
They're on board, and there's a lot going on there. And Ken Ivory, he has just been amazing. He's lived in an airplane for the last 2 years, running around educating. And
had a chance to meet Kevin when he came here to Richfield for a chamber meeting, and it's a passion for him. I mean, he really believes in what he's doing with this cause, and you can't help but feel that when you talk to him about it.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Some on the left would like you to believe that he's doing this for money. He walked away from I don't know what it was, $400,000 a year law practice, and I think he took $40,000 last year for the effort that he's doing. I can't say enough about Ken's motives here. It's truly a passion for him. It's about his kids. It's about the generations to come, and he's just been amazing. There's a lot of good things going on with the American Lands Council. They just launched a new website with a product called Nation Builder, which connects everyone who is involved in the movement and helps manage the whole thing. So if you haven't checked that out, AmericanLandsCouncil.org. A lot of stuff going on there, and a lot of great information. The one thing that came out of the workshop, which was probably the most important thing, was for a long time there's been a lot of speculation. That old adage, in the absence of rules, people will make them up. Well, it's kind of the same. In the absence of policy statements, people will make up what your policies are. So we finalized a policy statement coming out of that session, which really lays out the policy statement for the American Lands Council, what we stand for and what we don't stand for. And if you want to go, my Facebook page, Darin Bushman, Paiute County Commissioner, I've got that posted on there. It's also on the American Lands Council.
You spell Darin with 2 R's?
Nope, Darin.
Okay,
yep.
Bushman.
Yep. So, ton of information there. So much stuff going on with public lands right now. We have locally the 3 forest grazing plan revision, which has been announced that they want to look at opening up the forest plan to reevaluate grazing. There's, we have the waters of the U.S. going on as the EPA water grab, in my opinion. The Forest Service has come out with a plan rule revision that they want to take control of all surface water. There's just a ton of stuff. I sent Senator Okerlund an email the other day. I'm subscribed to the Federal Registry for any keywords that have to do with Paiute or Paiute County or the Paiute Trail, and I had 160 entries in one day last week.
Oh my!
So it is nearly impossible for somebody to stay on top of all of the stuff that's coming down from the federal government on things that affect us locally. It's insane, really.
Darin, one of the for opponents against the transfer of public lands, one of their biggest concerns is, can the state afford to manage the lands? And that's always kind of been their thing, that the federal government's having a hard time affording it. How is the state supposed to take over? But it's kind of an interesting thing with the added revenue that would be coming into the states to do that.
Well, we know there's plenty of data out there. If you go read, there's a book called Who's Managing the Federal Estate. There's a ton of data on how much more efficient state management of public lands is versus federal management of public lands. And Ken has all this memorized to the hilt. I can't remember all the data, but it's something in the neighborhood of states are making $11 to $15 an acre, and the feds are losing $1.83 an acre on the same type of land. When people give me that argument, I'm like, you do realize that 52% of all the mineral lease revenues off of these lands go to the federal government, and they keep it. And on top of that, they charge us all the administrative fees of managing that, and you and I can only guess at what that amounts to. So, there's been a number of studies done to look at this and the costs, and the biggest one is actually being done right now by the governor's Public Lands Policy Office, and Kathleen Clark will release, I believe the date somewhere in the middle of December, will release a full-on evaluation of this. They've created a big economic model to look at this and do what-if scenarios and whatnot. But I have all the confidence in the world that this is a win-win for the state of Utah and the citizens of the state of Utah. Just bottom line, Duke, if you want to boil it all down to one simple thing, in my opinion, is would you rather have somebody managing these lands that show up on your ballot every 2, 4, or 6 years, or would you rather have them managed by a bureaucrat 2,800 miles away who you can't unelect, who, when you do give them input, they say thank you very much and do what they want to do anyways? When people argue with me that we'd be better off to have the federal government manage this, I can't understand that for the life of me. You have no input to the process. Time and time again, we object to things and they go on and do as they please. There's been a massive uprising. I heard over 200,000 pieces of feedback on the waters of the U.S. EPA water grab. And I was on a conference call day before yesterday with the Western Interstate Regional Conference of the National Association of Counties. And our legislative person from NACO said that she has been 100% reassured from the EPA that they're going to go ahead and do what they intended to do. So even though you've got massive outcry from the public, they're going to do what they want to do because ultimately they don't show up on your ballot every 2, 4, or 6 years. And that's what this is really about, Duke. I mean, that's where it should be.
And before we run out of time, there's even people that would love to see the transfer of public lands are still skeptical that it could actually be a reality, that it's something that's even worth fighting for. Where do you see this going in the future? Do you feel like it's gaining enough traction that it's something that could actually happen?
I believe it can wholeheartedly. I wouldn't be putting the amount of work into it that I am, Duke. There's, we have three things that are kind of our mantra of the American Lands Council. It's, education, legislation, and litigation. And somewhere in there is negotiation. But, that's the intention. It would be awesome if we could handle this with negotiation and legislation. I don't know it's going to go there. There's a really solid case to be made for equal footing. If you go back in the Federalist Papers and you look at how it is that we came up with the Senate and the House and the makeup of them and whether they were elected by the public or whether they were elected by the state and how many there were, there was an argument that it should be entirely population-based. And, of course, the smaller states were arguing, oh, no, it shouldn't be population-based. Every state should get 2 votes, blah, blah, blah. So that's how we ended up with where we are today with, the Senate makeup versus the House makeup, one being, the popular vote and the other, the number of people is a representative of population versus just 2 per state. And so now if you look at that from the standpoint of equal footing and you look at the fact that states who have 66 or in the case of Nevada, 89% federally controlled lands, and you go, well, how can you effectively grow your population if the federal government prevents you from utilizing your land? There's a very solid case to be made that this is not equal footing and that it is a violation of the United States Constitution because of the equal footing clause. And so that, in addition to, there's a whole bunch of contractual law that goes back to the state enabling acts. I believe there's some very solid legal arguments, and there have been 2 different white papers done on this. They're on the American Lands Council page, and one by BYU and one by the Federalist Society, who believes there's a solid case to make this happen. So,
well, you sure have your knowledge down. The lands and the state and Paiute County are lucky to have a guy. You have all that background, all that information, and you can use it to plead your cause.
I've been drinking from a fire hose for 2 years.
There you go. Yeah. Well, you obviously have good retention.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to believe that just 2 years ago I was hoofing it around Paiute County, knocking on doors and handing out flyers. And I tell people sometimes it was a weak moment, but honestly, it's just been such a pleasure to serve, and it's been so educational. I had no idea what I was going to learn and the great people that I was going to meet. And, I kind of believe in this all-in scenario, so I've just jumped in all in. I'm fully committed to this, even though it's supposed to be a part-time job. It's far from part-time for me, but I've just loved having the opportunity, and it's an honor to serve the people of Paiute County, and I see it as serving the people of Utah as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Darin, thanks so much for coming in and giving us a recap of the American Land Council's meeting and an update on the battle.
Yes, well, I appreciate the opportunity. So
Stay after it.
All right. Thank
Darin
you, guys.
Bushman, Paiute County Commissioner, joining us today on KSVC. Tradio is on the way.